Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Post with BP. I'm your host, Billy Parvatam. Folks, I'm so excited today to be joined by Coach Kevin Curtin. Coach Curtin is a high school teacher, teaching history at George C. Marshall High School, my high school. In fact, he was my history teacher freshman year. This is now his third time on the podcast. We're so excited to have him back to discuss the Super Bowl, recap that, talk about the big picture, what's going to happen in the NFL offseason, and, of course, always enjoy talking a little bit away from sports and some questions to get to know Coach better. Coach, so great to have you back. It's your third time on the podcast, like I said, and second straight year doing the Super Bowl, recapping the Super Bowl. So great to have you back on once again. Thanks for coming.
Billy, is that you? I can hear you. I can't see you. I'm just coming out of my 4-day darkness retreat. Me and Aaron Rodgers hanging out, trying to figure out what we're doing next. Is that you? Is that I hear you?
Yeah, that's me. That's me.
All right, Billy. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I love coming out and talking football with you, bud.
Yeah, for sure. And we all know how much you love Aaron Rodgers, so I really
Yeah, well,
appreciate that.
he's a piece of work.
Yeah, that's right. So let's get right to it, Coach. Super Bowl 57 on Sunday. Man, what a great game. The Chiefs and the Eagles. The Chiefs end up coming out on top, 38-35, win their second Super Bowl in the previous 4 years. I mean, so many great storylines from the game. It was kind of a back and forth affair. Eagles started out hot early. They go up 24-14 at half. And then you see the greatness of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Every possession in the second half was a score, a touchdown, except the last drive, which was a game-winning field goal, 38-35. It's the third highest Super Bowl in terms of points scored. I mean, again, you look at some of the statistics. Patrick Mahomes, 3 touchdowns, 182 yards. Not his greatest statistical start, but just the way he led the team in the second half. He's your Super Bowl MVP for a second time. Jalen Hurts was spectacular for the Eagles. 304 yards passing, 1 touchdown pass, and on the ground, 70 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. So it showed you how big time he was for Philly. I mean, just such a great game. We'll get to kind of how it ended in a second here, but overall, I mean, you look at the Super Bowl. How excited were you for this game, and what do you take away from it?
It's nice when a season has the two clear-cut best teams meet in the Super Bowl, right? You see it a lot in baseball and you see it a lot in basketball, where those 7-game series, the cream rises to the top. And in football playoffs, sometimes upsets happen and there's not much can be done. But these are the best two teams in football, and them coming together and playing like this was great. I think we got pretty spoiled last year. The playoffs last year were exceptional, right? There was, I want to say, like the divisional weekend, every game came down to the last play. And the rest of the playoffs were kind of mediocre. I mean, I don't mean to be a downer, but there were no great games until the Super Bowl. And I guess that's really what you want. You want a great game in the Super Bowl. Had two great teams going at it. Love to see all the scoring. You got to tip your cap to the Eagles. They played a hell of a game, but when you're going against, I think 3 all-timers, right? I think Andy Reid's top 10 coach all time. Patrick Mahomes, we'll talk about him later. He's a legend in the making, and I think Travis Kelce is somebody that's got to be mentioned as somebody that, whether he's making plays or drawing defense for his teammates to make plays, he's somebody that allows them to sustain drives and whether it's runs that come off of them trying to drop into coverage, or it's his teammates getting open because they're double teaming him. This is, he's a difference maker.
And, obviously you look at kind of the way the game ended. I mean, it looked like pound for pound, both these teams are going back and forth. And I mean, look, to be fair, it's not the reason the Eagles lost the game because, they allowed a touchdown every single half. Their defense wasn't great. Isaiah Pacheco did a great job running the ball against a team that was really good against the run. But of course, that defensive holding call on James Bradbury with like a minute 40 left on Juju Smith-Schuster basically gave the Chiefs a new set of first downs, enabled them to run out the clock essentially and kick a game-winning field goal. Whereas if that play had stood and it was a 4th down, you would have had a field goal, and then if it went in, Jalen Hurts has a minute 40, a chance to tie the game. A lot more exciting of an end to the Super Bowl. James Bradbury did admit after the game that it was a holding call, but obviously I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen all kinds of commentators, Keyshawn Johnson, Joel Klatt, I mean, all kinds of guys saying, look, that's not the way you end a Super Bowl. We've all seen worse not called. I was mad because I took a plus 600 bet that the Super Bowl record of 75 points will be broken, and it might have hit if we had another touchdown, but unfortunately that field goal there kind of cooked me at the end. But what do you think, Coach? What do you think about the call that basically ended the Super Bowl?
It's a tough call, but at the end of the day, my biggest problem with it was that it wasn't consistent. If that had been the way it had been called all game, great. Go ahead, make the call. As the Eagles said, and my goodness, I think that speaks to Sirianni, the team, Bradbury, all of them, whether it was Kelsey, everybody going on stepping up in front of the microphone and saying it was the right call. It was the right call, but it hadn't been made all game. And I think that's the thing that frustrates Eagles fans, right? Is that if that's called all game, if that's what the expectations are, then players, right? If every sporting event, right? If the calls are tight, you make an adjustment early and you play to the tight calls. If the calls are loose, then everybody gets it's both defenses get away with that stuff. And for that to be a call, it reminded me a lot of the Cooper Kupp play that extended the drive on the Rams last year, right? There was a questionable holding call, and it's a tough way to lose a championship. I can't imagine how that feels, and for them to own up and say, no, that's not it, right? The defense saying we didn't get it done. They didn't get it done. So what'd you have? 3.5 minutes before I'd bring up the Rams? What was the over under on that? what did DraftKings have it in before I mentioned the Rams?
Yeah, that's a good point there. I guess going on that point, did you actually enjoy? I asked this question kind of last year. Did you actually enjoy the Super Bowl this year in terms of watching the commercials, the halftime show, because your team wasn't in it? I mean, I thought first of all Rihanna was spectacular. Maybe not as good as last year, but I mean, she did a great job. And apparently, she was pregnant after the game. So just imagine, or that was revealed, I should say, after the game. So just imagine, I mean, doing that kind of show in front of the whole world. And apparently you're pregnant. I mean, just incredible. So did you actually have a chance to maybe enjoy the game more from a fan perspective this year?
It was so much more of an enjoyable experience. I got together with friends last year. It was strictly isolated. I didn't want to be around anybody. I wasn't looking to interact with folks. But yeah, I got together with friends. What I realized about halfway through is I think I shushed somebody at a commercial break, and everybody looked at me like I had 3 heads, and it was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll catch up with the commercial. So I didn't do that, but had a great time with friends. Got to enjoy the game. Last year my heart rate was probably at an average of 150, and I was just able to enjoy this experience a little bit more in terms of the overall. I didn't even get to enjoy Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, all those guys last year. And so it was nice to be able to have that. Would I have preferred the Rams be there and winning? Absolutely. But this is American culture, right? This is not just a sporting event. This is our music industry. This is the pillars of our economy, whether it's drinking or whether it's gambling and cars, those commercials. It's an experience in and of itself. So it's fun to enjoy that. And Rihanna, the big takeaway is that she has so many singles that there were like 5 or 6 songs that I was like, when is she going to play this? When is she going to play this? She doesn't get to them. She's incredible. I love her music, great performance. And, any woman that is pregnant and carrying a child always gets an enormous amount of respect from me. To then go and perform in front of millions, hundreds of millions of people is something else.
So I wanted to ask you about 3 Chiefs here and talk about their legacies following the game. First, I want to start off with the head coach, Andy Reid. I mean, here's a guy that coached for years in Philadelphia and only made it to 1 Super Bowl, losing in the NFC Championship game. He links up with Patrick Mahomes after a few years with Alex Smith, and he's been in the AFC Championship game 5 straight years, now won 2 Super Bowls. Where does he rank now in terms of the greatest coaches of all time in your estimation? I don't know if you'd say he's better than Belichick, but I think another favor in his cap is you look at his coaching tree. I mean, look at all the successes from his coaching tree. John Harbaugh has won a Super Bowl. Ron Rivera's been to a Super Bowl. Doug Peterson's won a Super Bowl. You've got a couple other guys there that had a couple successful years with their respective teams. You look at Bill Belichick's guys. I mean, Matt Patricia, Josh McDaniels, Joe Judge. It's just not the same. So, in your estimation, where does Andy Reid rank in terms of greatest coaches ever?
I think there are the tops of the top, right? The Belichick, the Chuck Knowles, the Walsh for the 49ers. I think they are the sort of clear cut. I heard a great statistic this week. 13 coaches have won 2 Super Bowls. And so that is, I think Andy Reid is in that second tier of exceptional coaches. There's some other guys like Tom Coughlin who won 2 that I don't think were innovators like Andy Reid was. But, you win 2 Super Bowls, you're an all-time coach. I think Andy Reid's in that sort of second tier of coaches of guys that innovated the game, progressed the game, won a fair amount. But again, there are legends ahead of them. But boy, it's tough for me to be critical of a guy who's seen the success that he has. But yeah, I think he's obviously made his way into the Hall of Fame, and I don't know if he's got 5 more years. That's not a ton of time, right? If he goes till he's 70 and gets 2 more, he finds his way into that top tier.
And speaking of their tight end, Travis Kelce, I mean, first of all, it was also the Kelce Bowl because you had Travis versus his older brother, Jason, the Eagles center, who's been there forever. And by the way, have you ever listened to their podcast, New Heights? I mean, I think that might be the most entertaining sports podcast out there.
I've seen some of their clips, and they're funny and they're thoughtful, and you love. I have an older brother who I love very much, and who we antagonize each other. And to watch them, I watched a clip today of Kelsey's mom sort of celebrating with Travis, and then talking to his brother, and Jason is distraught. He's shook up and he's hugging his mom. And I've been there. I remember playing in sporting events and just being devastated after a loss and just hugging my mom. And I was getting emotional sitting in my classroom between periods watching Jason Kelce with his mom, I can't imagine what that's like to have 2 children in at the peak of their career competing against each other. It's wild. What a fun family. And they seem to work hard and enjoy their life outside of football as well, which I think, Tom Brady, and I know we're going to talk about him later, drives himself to the extreme. And for a lot of people, that's the way they do it, and God bless them. But I think I'm probably more of a Kelce brother in my approach to things, where you work hard and you play hard. And those guys are gifted, and they're funny, and they're smart on and off the field. They're not, when they're done with football, they're not going to be done in the limelight. That's for sure.
And I know I was going to ask you about Travis. Where do you think he ranks in terms of greatest tight ends of all time? I mean, I think the 2 guys you think about in that conversation, one, Tony Gonzalez, who played forever. I mean, in terms of longevity, he probably has most of the records. But then a guy that a lot of people say right now is the greatest tight end ever, that's Rob Gronkowski, probably the most dominant. Now, he got hurt, I think, so that you look at his numbers, they may not be as, as good as in terms of Tony Gonzalez. But where is Travis Kelce number 3? I mean, has he surpassed one of those guys? Or
I mean, we're going to talk about him and Patrick Mahomes, and their careers aren't done, right? I think when you look at like postseason statistics, there's just nobody that compares to Gronk, right? And when you look at regular season statistics, Tony Gonzalez was one of a kind, right? I remember Antonio Gates. I mean, there were some good Kellen Winslow. There were some good tight ends, but to match the postseason with the regular season the way Kelce does, again, it's a season or 2 more, and he's catching Gronk, right? Gronk, I think, is the gold standard now simply because of the postseason success. He was a great regular season guy. He was dominant in the postseason. He was the guy that made the plays. I remember Rams Patriots second Super Bowl, and Gronk caught, this is a defensive battle, and Gronk catches this ball that gets him down inside the 5, and they win the game. And those are the plays that big players make in big moments, right? And Tony Gonzalez didn't have big moments. And I loved him. He was a great ball player. Antonio Gates, great ball player. Those guys maybe played 1 or 2 playoff games and really didn't do much. And so when you look at those 2 guys and their regular season and postseason success, it's Gronk and Kelce, and Kelce's still got some time to go here.
And speaking of Patrick Mahomes, I mean, this is the big question, you've seen on all the sports debates and all the highlights, after the game, is where does he now rank in terms of all-time greatest quarterbacks? I mean, I think it's easy for us to get prisoner of the moment and maybe rank people higher than they should a lot of times after these type of games. But I've heard a lot of people say he's definitely top 3 now. You got Brady, Montana, and he's right there. Some people put him higher than Montana now. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know. You might have caught the tail end of Montana's career, but in terms of Mahomes, where does he rank now in your estimation?
He's top 3. He's top 3 for me. I mean, again, you're projecting. You're saying this guy's going to stay healthy. He's going to play another decade. I think these are the sort of wins that get him past a guy like John Elway, where they have the same number of Super Bowls, or a Brett Favre, or these guys that are legends of the game, and they're legends of the game because they've got a Super Bowl, and this is his third. He lost one, but that's not how his legacy is defined at this point, right? He's got 2 already, and what's he, 26, 27, and he's just entering his prime. And so later when we talk about their window, he's their window, right? He's the guy. I don't think there are many quarterbacks like him. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 who at this point in the league who are you could put in the same discussion, but his pocket presence, he moves well. He can pick up the first down with his feet if he has to, but he doesn't, right? He picks up, he moves well, gives his guys time to get open, and a 10-yard run turns into instead a 50-yard pass. And he's special. He's creative. It's, he can play in the system. When the system breaks down, he can do his own thing. And it's a lot of fun to watch. You're jealous of the Kansas City Chiefs fans. The same way my best friend's a Packers fan. When you got a good quarterback, life is good. Every Sunday you turn in and you're within 7 points in the fourth quarter, and okay, I'm going to sit here and watch this, and more times than not, my quarterback's going to win. And he's, if you think of it like by the decades, right? And Joe Montana was the 80s, and maybe Troy Aikman was the 90s. Brady had 2 decades of his dominance, and this is him taking over. And there's no doubt in my mind he's the best player in the NFL right now. And moving forward, this is an offensive first league. He's not going to take big hits. Maybe he gets, hopefully he doesn't get hurt, but if it is, it's going to be his legs because he's running, that sort of thing, like the high ankle sprain. He's not going to take the pounding that these old guys do. So if you're telling me he's playing till 40, I wouldn't be shocked.
But I guess here's my question. Can he catch Brady's 7 Super Bowl rings? I mean, to me, you never say never, but I say no shot. I mean, first of all, people forget Tom went 10 years without winning between his 3rd and 4th ring. I mean, there's a reason there hasn't been a repeat champion in the NFL in almost 20 years because the salary cap has really made parity, I think, even more of a widespread thing. And in terms of the GOAT conversation, to me, Brady has 7 rings and he beat Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So to me, if they both get 7, I still got to give the edge to Brady. But I guess where do you stand on that whole debate? A, do you think he can surpass Brady, or B, what does he have to do, I guess, to eventually get to Brady and surpass him as the GOAT?
In your preface to the meeting, one of the questions was, is he going to catch Tom Brady? And this is what I wrote. I don't know if you can see it. It's no. There's no chance. 7 is unattainable. And I think what sometimes people forget is Brady lost 3 Super Bowls. So is he going to be able to get to 7 Super Bowls? Maybe. Is he going to win them all? He's got to get to 5 more Super Bowls and win all 5 of them. I think that's a pretty steep hill to climb. I don't think he does. I've never seen the parity in the NFL is intentional, right? They don't want teams to be dynastic. They want if you're going to be Patrick Mahomes and you're going to have a salary as big as you are, it's going to affect the rest of your team. And there's going to be some maybe I don't know if Justin Herbert's still on his rookie contract. There's going to be some quarterbacks who can play, and Jalen Hurts is another guy where you can build a roster around them to compete, and that's going to make his life hard in the AFC playoffs. And then you got to go win these Super Bowl games, and whether it's the Bucks a couple of years ago with a pass rush that just swallowed him alive, or it was one call away from Jalen Hurts having the ball with 1:40. Football is a game of inches. I'm stealing a line there from Any Given Sunday, but it's hard to predict that. And even the best player in NFL history lost three Super Bowls. You look at Jordan, you look at Bill Russell, those guys didn't lose. And it's because you got a little bit more room for error in these other leagues. The NFL doesn't give you that room for error.
So realistically, you would say, I mean, again, it's hard to project, but I think he can get to 4. What do you think? 4
I
is
think
real?
5. I think 5. I mean, he's still in his 20s, and playing till 40 just is not what it was, right? You look at Terry Bradshaw, you look at it again, like guys like Troy Aikman, Jim Kelly, and the toll that the sport used to take on your body as a quarterback. Again, these guys still are getting pounded. The guys that are falling on them are gigantic, but you watch a game like that Eagles 49ers game and you appreciate, you take a moment and appreciate what the NFL is doing, because the quarterbacks drive this league, and even a backup, the game plan just shifts entirely. And the second half of that Eagles 49ers game was about as dull as it gets. And so you understand why they do it. And I think that's the sort of thing that gives Mahomes the longevity to push 5. And if he gets 7, if he chases down Brady, I wouldn't be shocked, but I still don't see it happen. And to finish with 5 Super Bowls would put him ahead of Montana, would put him ahead of Bradshaw. That seems about right.
And so I guess in a team sense, I mean, what do you think the Chiefs Super Bowl window is? I mean, obviously you said Mahomes can get to 5. I mean, you talk about the AFC. I mean, I think the more stacked conference, all these great
Yep.
young quarterbacks,
Yep.
Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. I mean, Trevor Lawrence too. He's up and coming. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at the Chiefs. I mean, how long do you think they can stay on top of the conference?
I don't know about on top of the conference. I mean, Tom Brady went to what, like 10 straight conference championship games. I see Mahomes being able to do that. I think their window is Mahomes' window. They keep him. You saw what Tom Brady was able to do and cycle through skill player after skill player, from Troy Brown early on to Corey Dillon to Randy Moss to Gronk towards the end, and Edelman. I mean, players of this caliber make solid or above average NFL players into Pro Bowlers, and the Chiefs window is as long as Mahomes is there.
And you look at, of course, the other team, the Philadelphia Eagles. What do you think their chances are of getting back to Super Bowl? I mean, I remember something you said last year, in that a lot of times when you lose Super Bowl, you kind of get knocked down for a while, and it
Yep.
takes a little bit to get back up. Although the Bengals this year, I mean, they were
Yeah,
a
they were a great
potentially
team.
controversial
Yeah.
targeting call away from at least getting to overtime, and who knows what would have happened then, and making it back to the Super Bowl. And but I thought it was always interesting, Coach. I mean, you look at obviously the playoffs, the Eagles weren't really tested. I mean, they played
No.
Daniel Jones for the 3rd time. They played the Niners without a real quarterback in the second half, and of course, Josh Johnson hadn't played at meaningful reps in a long time. And, I was even looking at their schedule here. I mean, you look at the guys they played. I mean, Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, even Aaron Rodgers. I mean, people say he's an elite quarterback, but by his standards, really didn't have a good season this year. I mean, you got Dak Prescott. It really seemed like they played a lot of 2nd and 3rd tier quarterbacks, but they really never played an elite quarterback all year until the Super Bowl. So I think that, again, you got to give them credit for winning the games, but, it just kind of felt like the Super Bowl was really the first time they played a guy like Mahomes all year long. So obviously, I think both you and I agree NFC is probably weaker on paper, although some teams emerged that we didn't think were going to emerge, or this past regular season. But what do you think about the Eagles, Jalen Hurts? Do you think they can make it back to another Super Bowl?
So I think the Eagles are set up for at least short-term success, another year or two. It depends on what guys like Aaron Rodgers decide. We're going to talk about this later, Billy. Your number one guy, Lamar Jackson. I don't know that he's long for the world of Baltimore, but we'll talk about him later. Depends on where quarterbacks go, where the young quarterbacks go. If anybody's going to bubble up and be a Pro Bowler in their first couple of years coming out of college. But I think the Eagles at the very least right now kind of again remind me of my team, the Rams, when Jared Goff was on his rookie contract. Right, Jalen Hurts is a above average quarterback. He is a improving passer. He's also somebody that runs the ball real well, but I think that's something that's he's gonna end up getting dinged up. And you see somebody like Russell Wilson, when the legs go, you got to be an elite passer in the NFL. And I think Jalen Hurts is heading in the right direction, but I'm fearful the second he gets that first big contract, he goes from being one of the best bargains in the NFL to being one of the most overpaid players. You see it with Kyler Murray, you saw it with Jared Goff. If you can pay a guy on a rookie contract and give everybody else money, you got a window. And they got that window with Jalen Hurts as long as he's on the rookie contract. The second you got to devote 25% of your salary cap to a guy, that shifts what your skill players look like, your offensive line looks like, your defense looks like. And he's not Mahomes. He's a great player. He's a good football player, but guys like Mahomes or Brady or Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, when they get paid, they can carry a team. And maybe he'll get there. Maybe Jalen will get there, but he's got a little ways to go. But he strikes me as a leader, as a person of high character, a teammate. Teammates seem to love. I can see him getting better, but he's got a long way to go if the Eagles window is going to be a decade.
So who do you think is more likely to make it back to Super Bowl 58, the Chiefs or the Eagles? I know
Chiefs.
the AFC is more
Chiefs.
stacked, but I might go with the Chiefs. I just think organization-wise, they've got a better team around Mahomes. You still got Travis Kelce,
Oh yeah.
Andy Reid. I would go Chiefs. How about you?
I still think it's the Chiefs, but I think it's what you talked about. The conference is tougher. AFC is tougher. You run into the Bills. They figure out a running game. It wouldn't shock me to see him and Joe Burrow exchange Super Bowls back and forth. I like the Chargers. I just don't think they're Super Bowl caliber. They haven't proven the ability to win consistently. And a month into the season, the Bengals looked like they were going to be another loser of the Super Bowl who was going to go 4-10. They ripped off something like 9 or 10 straight wins. And I think that is a testament to Joe Burrow. There's a lot of talented players on his team, but there are some elite quarterbacks in the AFC that are going to make things a little bit more challenging for Mahomes. And I think, the Eagles might have a little easier path, but you see it when you've got an elite quarterback, you're going to win 10 or 11 games by putting the football out there. And when you get into the playoffs, those games are tight. Defenses find a way to slow teams down. Special teams make plays. And if you're within a score or two in the fourth quarter, I know who I want being my quarterback.
So give me your way too early Super Bowl 58 prediction. I mean, we are 360 days away from Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas, Allegheny Stadium. I mean, who are your two teams from the AFC and the NFC that you're predicting right now will meet in next year's Super Bowl?
I'm waffling between the Bengals and the Chiefs. I'm waffling there. I think they are both exceptional. We'll see what T. Higgins does. I think he's a difference maker for that offense. I think having two number ones makes Joe Burrow's life a lot easier. And if he loses him, I think Tyler Boyd's a ball player, but I think losing him might slow the productivity of that offense down just a hair. So I'm gonna lean towards the Chiefs, and this is I'm gonna do my best not to throw up in my mouth saying this, but I think the 49ers. I hate this team so much, but watching Christian McCaffrey in that offense with no quarterback, and he's still scoring touchdowns. Ayuk and Debo terrify me. George Kittle, when he's healthy, is exceptional. They got offensive line and a defensive line that terrorize people. I hate Bosa. I hate Warner. If you're on a team that goes against the Rams and I hate you, that probably means you're pretty darn good. It drives me crazy that every time we do these, you have that damn San Francisco background, and I got to look at that. But I think it's the Niners, and I think it's the Chiefs. So hopefully that's just the biggest reverse jinx I could throw out there, but they scare me, and Shanahan can get it done, and Purdy look good. And having two quarterbacks, especially when one runs, is a luxury in the NFL, and it seems like they've got a couple guys who can win games for them.
So I'm going to go in the AFC. I'm going to go with the Bengals. I think they'll be motivated next year, having lost to the Chiefs the way they did. I mean, Joe Burrow, in my opinion, really, I think surpassed Josh Allen as the top. I think he
Yep.
made himself with that win over the Bills a top two
Agreed.
quarterback in the game,
Yep.
obviously behind Patrick Mahomes. So I'm going with the Bengals, and then I'm going to shock you with this. I'm going to pick your Los Angeles Rams to make it back to the Super Bowl. I know you've got a lot maybe to say about that, but I just think, look, I mean, and we can talk about this too. I mean, what happened to your Rams? But of course, the most losses ever for a defending champion. But you just look at it. I mean, Matt Stafford was hurt. You know, Cooper Kupp, in my opinion, showed why he's the best receiver in the game. I mean, with just how valuable he was when it seemed like nothing else was going right for the Rams offense. You know,
Yeah.
I think, look, Matt Stafford comes back. Cooper Kupp comes back healthy. Sean McVay ended speculation that he would retire by coming back. I mean, you don't have the chip of being the defending champion anymore. And again, you look at the NFC. I still – you know, you got teams like the Seahawks and the Lions who did well, but I have to see it to believe it from them to do it again this upcoming season. I mean, I kind of like the Rams where they're at to make another
I'll be
Super Bowl.
I'll be excited to see what the schedule looks like. The last 4 or 5 years, it's been tough. It's been tough. Been to Tampa. We're going to the Packers, and I think that was, like you said earlier, a big part of the Eagles' success was a favorable schedule. And you know, if the Rams can find a way to, you know, I don't know that the Seahawks can sustain their success. I don't know that Geno's going to stay. I thought he was good. The Cardinals, PU. We can just go ahead and we can start the season off 0-2, and we don't have to play the Niners. That's fine with me. We can go from there, play 15 games. I don't know that the big thing for me was the offensive line. You know, Aaron Donald will be back. He'll be healthy. Even if he's 90% of Aaron Donald, he's Aaron Donald. I love Bobby Wagner. Man, I hated him when he was on Seattle, but holy cow, he came in. He was a leader on a team that did nothing this year. And he was the guy that showed up every single game, made plays. Jalen Ramsey's back. I mean, we got talent across the board. It's just about staying healthy, and you got to find a way to draft well. You know, they gave up so much draft capital for guys like Von Miller, for Matt Stafford and Jalen Ramsey. You got the blue chippers, and when they're healthy and they play like blue chippers, and they're difference makers. But you know, Aaron Donald misses 5 or 6 games. Matt Stafford misses a bunch of games. Von Miller goes somewhere else, and all of a sudden those holes are dramatic. And so, you know, if we have 1 or 2 contributors from the draft this year, guys stay healthy. I think it was like 10 weeks in, the Rams had 8 or 9 different starting offensive lines. And it's not a recipe for success when you're going against Nick Bosa.
So, and I don't know if you actually picked a winner. So Chiefs, Niners, who do you think, if you had to pick right now, wins that game?
Chiefs. I'm not picking the Niners to do shit. Excuse me. Anything. I'm not doing the Niners.
I'm gonna go with the Bengals for right now, but I mean, you know, it's you know, so many things can happen. I mean, no one expected we'd have the off season we had last year happen. So I mean, so many moving parts before we
off season's going to be huge this year. I'll be,
sure.
you know, I've got a couple teams that are going to, I think make the playoffs depending on where quarterbacks shake out. And it's not just your top end, your Aaron Rodgers and your Lamar Jacksons. It's, you know, if Derek Carr ends up on the Titans, is he the sort of steady hand that they need? They don't ask him to do too much. He's not forced to throw the ball 50 times a game. You know, the right quarterback on the right team, I think ends up really shifting things pretty dramatically. And so let's see how things shake out over the next 4 or 5 months here, and then we can see where things go. But I don't dislike that Bengals pick.
For sure. And I was going to ask you, because, you know, I was looking at this, on average, 7 teams that didn't make the playoffs the previous year make the playoffs in the NFL. That's what I think is so great about the NFL, is that all the parity. So give me a team that did not make the playoffs last year that you think will make it next year.
I love my wife. It was Valentine's Day 2 days ago. It's the Lions. I got the Lions. Man, the second half of the season, they look great. I'm blanking on the kids, the wide receiver's name from Alabama, who came back in the back half of the year. No, the first draft of the year. It's I want to say Jamal Williams. I know that's their running back, but they had a wide receiver that goes with Amon Ra. They got a great line. I love that they commit to the run. That makes Jared Goff. That was when Jared Goff was at his best with the Rams, when he could play action, when he had wide open looks. And they got my Ramey's pick in the top 10. They're going to be able to start addressing that defense a little bit too. Give Aiden Hutchinson some help. I think that NFC North is going to continue to be mediocre. If Aaron Rodgers leaves, it'll be real mediocre. We saw I think my Super Bowl pick at the beginning of this year was the Vikings, and they started off hot, and then Kirk Cousins was who we thought he was, and did Kirk Cousins stuff. So I got the Lions in the NFC and the Jets in the AFC. I think that is predicated on Aaron Rodgers going there, or any sort of serviceable quarterback, because boy, their defense was scary. Their defense was really scary.
I believe it was Jamison Williams you were talking about.
James, there it is. Yes.
Yep. So in the NFC, I mean, I already said the Rams were going to make the Super Bowl, so I'm going to predict the Rams to make the playoffs again. I just think that division is pretty much down to them and the Niners. I think they can at least get a wild card spot, if not win the division. And then I might surprise you on this. I'm going with the Patriots in the AFC.
Okay.
They were 8-9, but again, I mean, you look at a few of those games. You had that famous lateral the Raiders got that took them the other way. I mean, you got a couple other games in there they lost by a possession. And people, I mean, look, Mac Jones is not on the same tier as some of the elite quarterbacks, but also he didn't have an offensive coordinator. I mean, he had Matt Patricia and Joe Judge calling plays. This year they bring in Bill O'Brien from Alabama back. He's got a true seasoned offensive coordinator now. So, people got to give Bill Belichick credit. I mean, in the couple of years since Brady has not been there, they've missed the playoffs twice. Basically they were one of the final teams remaining before they got knocked out, then made the playoffs one year. So I like the Patriots. Mac Jones gets an offensive coordinator to make some noise next year.
That division's tough. That's the one thing I look at is they got to go play in Miami. They got to go play in Buffalo. If the Jets are improving, that's a tough division. But yeah, given that defense is always going to be a top 5 unit. Bill Belichick's the best to ever do it at the defensive side of the football, and so that offense can even scratch average. They're gonna put some wins together
for sure. And as we transition, I guess, to some of the big picture NFL offseason questions, I want to ask you, about Sean Payton. I mean, here's a guy that was in the TV booth for a year after coaching the Saints for all those years, and there was talks he might go to the Cowboys, he might go to the Chargers. The Broncos end up making a big haul to trade him a couple first and second round picks to bring him back to try to resurrect Russell Wilson. I guess, what do you think about Sean Payton to Denver? Do you think he can bring Russell Wilson back? Because my thought was, look, I think he's a better coach than Mike McCarthy. But if you look at their resumes, I mean, those guys are pretty much the same. Two guys they had an elite quarterback. They won 12 years ago. They haven't done anything since. I just didn't think it was worth it for really a lot of these teams to make the trade to actually, because they would have had to trade him to get his rights from the Rams. Now the Broncos want to make a splash in that division, so maybe for them it makes a little more sense. But what do you think? Can Sean Payton bring Russell Wilson back?
So I think the one big thing that he can do is be a voice in that locker room that can sort of tamp down what Russell Wilson is doing. I think what has become clear is that teammates have never liked Russell Wilson. Whether it's Richard Sherman, some of these guys for the Broncos, you get these leaks that nobody's showing up to his birthday party, stuff like that. And it's clear he is a guy that marches to the beat of his own drum. Fine. Your teammates don't need to like you, but they do need to respect you. And it feels like he's losing an awful lot of respect from his teammates because he's not the guy he was 5 years ago. And I think what Sean Payton can do is be the voice in the locker room that tells him, I'm in charge now, right? The head coach in Denver last year was going to be overmatched by him because he didn't have the cred that Sean Payton does. Sean Payton can walk in that room and say, I've won a Super Bowl. I've led top 5 offenses for a decade. And so if he can find a way to sort of take control of that locker room, help Russell be successful. He seems he's a great offensive mind. It seems like he's the sort of guy that can put Russell and that offense in positions to be successful. If they can do that, and Russell can just be the quarterback instead of the guy that seems to alienate teammates on the sideline. The idea that he had his own coaches in there and that Hackett's letting his own coaches is just I can't believe it. That is that's wild stuff. And so to have a voice in the room that might be able to sort of say, hey, Russell, just be the quarterback. We don't need you to be the Broncos country, let's ride. We don't need you to be the guy that is yelling at everybody on the sideline to say it's pass when there's a passing down. Just take care of running the offense and we'll do the rest. I think that is the sort of thing that, Russell Wilson doesn't have to be Russell Wilson from the Super Bowl, but if he can get the ball to they got some playmakers, they got some great wide receivers, they got a strong running back when they give it to him. He doesn't need to work miracles. It's just somebody that's got to give him a little bit of perspective and let him know that, this is your role on our team. I don't see it happening. I do think it's possible, though. I think it was a worthwhile chance. You invest so much in Russell Wilson. You gotta double down on it. And that's scary if you're a Broncos fan, but this probably gives him the best chance.
But do you think right now, if you had to predict they make the playoffs, I mean, I say no because you look at the AFC East and AFC North. I mean, those divisions are stacked. You could easily have 3 teams making both those divisions. So I just say, because of the conference, I don't think even with Sean Payton they make the playoffs.
Conference is going to be tough. I don't know what their schedule looks like. I think Vegas is going to be down again. I think they're going to be down, and I'm not a believer in Brandon Staley as a head coach. I think Herbert gets a little bit of, he is the king of Twitter. Every time I go on Twitter, I'm being told that Justin Herbert is the second coming. I think he's good. I haven't seen him win a lot of football games. And so if they start out poorly, I've been around long enough to see the Chargers find a way to screw up seasons before. So I could see them, I don't know if they're playing the NFC South. Sure, they could get to 10 wins, but again, this was a big swing. This was a very big swing, and hey, you don't own football teams to go 9-8. Go out and see what you can get done.
Maybe the biggest offseason question is, what do you think is going to happen with Lamar Jackson? I mean, to me, this is all baffling. I mean, here's a guy who I think is electric. Like you talked about, he's my favorite player in the NFL. And the Ravens are just such a great organization. You just wouldn't expect them to kind of having this back and forth. Reports are they're going to franchise tag him, but they still are refusing to commit to him long term. And to be honest, I mean, you look at him on the field last couple of years. I mean, 2 years ago that he misses the last 5 games. They end up narrowly missing the playoffs this year. I think he's actually hurt. I don't think he's the type of guy to be like, look, if he can play, he's going to play.
Yeah.
But I do think maybe he didn't try as hard, if that's kind of the right way to frame it, to maybe come back as he could have. Ravens almost knocked off the Bengals. I mean, and that's in that playoff game if Tyler Huntley does a fumble at the 1. But what's kind of your thoughts on the whole situation? And do you think he stays a Raven going into next season?
I think he does, only because of the franchise tag. But, I think there are some teams out there, the Texans, the Colts, the Panthers. I mean, if you can get them, you can get them. I think I bet you'd be hard pressed to find people in the Ravens organizations that would say this, but I think that when they found lightning in a bottle 5 years ago, they thought, okay, we're gonna tailor our offense around Lamar Jackson, the runner. And we're going to get 5 of his best years as a runner out of him. And if he continues to develop as a passer, great. But we're gonna pound him, and we're gonna make him run the football. And what you see in these last couple of seasons is a guy who is 215, 220 pounds, making plays for 10 games, but taking a beating. And it's not the hits in the pocket, but he's getting drag down heading into the sideline. He's picking up a first down and sliding, and guys are still landing on him. It's tough to be Lamar Jackson in that Ravens offense because it's read option and it's go. If he goes to a place like let's say Indianapolis, and he's got a Jonathan Taylor there, and he can turn around and hand it to him, do a little bit of read option. Sort of what the Bills do with Josh Allen, right? Where if it's the fourth quarter, sure, we need you to go get 10 yards, go get it. But for the rest of the game, put the ball in the guy's belly, let him run. If not, go out and throw the football. And so I don't know if I think he can do it. I do think he can be a pass first quarterback, but I think the Baltimore Ravens made a decision, and I don't know that anybody would be willing to admit it, but I think they're saying in a year or two he's we'll pay him what we need to pay him, but then maybe we're going to try and trade him because I don't know that they believe in him in the long run.
I agree with you. I think he stays a Raven this year, but long run, especially once the franchise tag gets too expensive, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
$48 million. How would you like that for a year, Billy? Huh?
I'll take it.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Speaking of another guy that's going to get more than that, that is your favorite guy, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, here we go doing the same thing Brett Favre did with the whole "Will I retire? Will I not retire?" He's going to make $60 million next year according to his contract. I just think, in my opinion, he's holding the Packers hostage. He's probably going to come back because he's not walking away from that money, but he just kind of wants to keep him on the edge a little bit. So what's your take on the whole situation? Do you think he stays a Packer come the fall, or he's going somewhere, maybe a team like the Jets that has his offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett?
I don't think he's retiring. I think he's going to keep playing. Yeah, I mean, a team trades for him, they got to win. They got to win now, right? It's got to be a 49ers. Maybe the Jets are a win now sort of organization, but it's not the Bucks, it's not the Raiders. I've heard the Raiders get thrown around there. He loves Devontae, but you're telling me he wants to go be in competition for second, maybe third best quarterback in that division? That's tough. I think he wants to go to a place where he can win now. And when you look at the NFC North, I think that's a place that he can continue to win. And as much as he likes to be the star of the show, as much as he likes to be the center of attention, I do think he likes to win. And I think the Packers may continue to be the best chance for him to win. Although if you wanna pretend like you know what that dude's thinking, then you let me know. But he is an example of what happens when success goes to somebody's head, and he's a guy that alienates his family, a guy that alienates his teammates. I mean, dude can sling it, but I don't know that I'm trading the farm to get a year or two of that headache.
I agree with you. I think he ends up staying a Packer, and I wouldn't summarily dismiss, like you said, that they couldn't win the NFC North with Aaron Rodgers starting
Agreed.
with some
they got a good running game. They got some guys. I think Christian Watson's going to continue to develop. They got some young wide receivers that can make plays. And yeah, I hope he continues to have no success. I don't have anything positive to say about him. He's just the worst.
What about Derek Carr? I mean, here's a guy that got cut by the Raiders. He's a free agent, so more flexibility on where he can go. Is there any team that stands out to you that you think could
Definitely,
be a good
yeah. I mentioned it earlier. I think it's the Titans. I think that NFC or AFC South is, I think the Jaguars are the best team there, but I don't think they're running away with it. I think they're getting better, and I wouldn't be shocked if they were an 11 or 12 win team next year. But I also wouldn't be shocked if they were a 7 or 8 win team. So go to the Titans, put the ball in Derrick Henry's belly, and let him chew up clock. Let that defense take care of business. I think when we talked about them at the beginning of the year, I said they were an organization on par with the Ravens. You just trust them. I trust the coaching staff. I like the decisions that they make. I don't think they're rash. I think they play a style of football that sometimes feels a little outdated, a little smash mouth, which there are times when it feels a little slow. It feels a little plodding, but you look at their record and they're in the mix the last week of every season heading into the playoffs. I think a guy like Derek Carr is a slight upgrade over Tannehill. I think he's the sort of guy that makes the throws you want. I don't know that I want him as my quarterback if we're down 10 heading into the fourth quarter, but I think a team like the Titans is going to be the sort of organization that keeps it close or has leads, and he can be a caretaker.
I might shock you with this one. I'm gonna be a homer here. The Commanders for Derek
Oh,
Carr.
okay. Okay, I
You
can
think
see
about
that
it, they
too.
were 8-1 with Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz. I mean, two guys that really shouldn't be starting in the NFL. You got, I think the defense is a very solid
Oh, yeah.
defense. You've got the piece on offense, Brian Robertson, Antonio Gibson, Scary Terry on the outside.
Yep,
So
Dotson,
I
yep.
mean that division too. I mean, it's not like the Cowboys. I mean they made the playoffs, but I don't think the Cowboys are some elite team by any stretch of the imagination. I
Nope.
say outside of the Eagles, you get Derek Carr. I think the
I
Commanders
like
are
it.
solidly the second best team in that division.
I think I remember the beginning of this season you trying to talk me into Carson Wentz. And I remember me
I
saying
was
Carson
wrong.
Wentz is not the guy. Okay. Just want to look at those receipts briefly. A brief receipt look at there.
And then here's another guy well, Jimmy G. I mean, here's a guy that I guess has an opportunity to finally lead the Niners, and I think you're talking about can be a serviceable type quarterback. Where do you think he ultimately plays? I think the Jets maybe if they don't get one of the big
Yeah.
swingers. I mean, Robert
That's not a
Saleh.
that's not a bad call. Yeah, I hadn't thought of the Salah connection there. I think the front runners for this are the Raiders. I think he wants to reunite with. I would love. I think he and Josh McDaniels would like to coach together, play together again. They were a successful pair when Jimmy G sort of burst onto the scene back in New England, and I think Patriots guys in terms of coaches like McDaniel want to have Patriots players like Jimmy G, somebody that they can say, "Hey, go out and do your job." Is Jimmy G going to throw a few floaters into the flat? Sure, but I don't love the Raiders, but I think if they can bring somebody in that is copacetic with their coaching staff, then maybe that is better for that organization. But yeah, I think at this point we're getting to the sort of the middle of the pack here in terms of these quarterbacks, and boy, you don't want to see a Jimmy G or a Derek Carr if you're the Commanders, or you're the Panthers, or you're the Colts. I don't know that that's a path to long-term success. I think you got to take a chance on a young guy, but I mean, organizations are going to say, I think we got the guys around it that we have a caretaker. We can make a run at things, and Carr and Jimmy G are both capable of being caretakers. They're also capable of being the guy that throws the crippling interception in the fourth quarter.
For sure. And speaking of young guys, what is your prediction with what happens in the NFL draft? Obviously, the Bears have the number one pick, thanks to Lovie Smith, their old coach. Have letting the Texans play for a win.
Love it, love it.
But,
Play to win the game, Billy. You play to win the game.
That's true. I mean, but you potentially lose out on your choice at least of one of the two young quarterbacks in Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. My prediction is I think the Bears trade the pick to someone and try to build around Justin Fields. I mean, you look at Justin Fields, he just hasn't had great coaching. I mean, one example I think a lot of people like to bring up is Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he was paired with Urban Meyer that first year. We know the mess that Urban Meyer created. This year he's paired with Doug Peterson to make the playoffs. So I think it's all about the type of coach that you can get around Justin Fields, build around him. So I predict the Bears trade the number one pick to someone, and Bryce Young will be the number one pick. What do you think happens?
I think you're right. I think the Bears. I mean, this defensive tackle from Georgia is a stud. I don't think it's the wrong decision if you go out and draft him, but I think a team like that, I watched a couple of Bears games this year, and you just got to give him a second, right? You got to give him a little bit of time to plant his back foot and make a throw before he's got to scramble. And Fields reminds me a little bit of Hurts, right? Where he's sort of forced to run at this point, but give him a chance to throw and let's see what he can do with, some offensive linemen in front of him. It's not just the draft pick that they've got. They've got an enormous amount of cap space. Go out and sign a couple offensive linemen. Give them some interior linemen that are going to make a difference in the run game. Go out and maybe draft a tackle with the 7th or 8th pick if you trade back. This is the sort of position that I think a smart GM trades down and is going to develop depth around a guy who is just an elite athlete. I mean, you watch these guys in college succeed, and you go, okay, let's see you do it in the pros. I remember thinking that about Lamar, right? He had that highlight against Cuse where he's hurdling guys and he's in the top. And great, let's see you do it in the pros. Go out and do it in the pros. Okay. Justin Fields went out and did it in the pros this year. Let's see if we can give him some targets or some pass catchers. A guy like Chase Claypool, whatever. He doesn't get me too excited, but let's support him and see what we can do for him. And I think by trading down, that does it.
This might be the biggest, question in terms of coaching this NFL offseason. What does Eric Bieniemy have to do to get a job? I mean, we've always known that the NFL hasn't been great at diversity. And you look at the 5 teams that just hired. You had 2 Eagles coordinators, offensive and defensive. You had DeMeco Ryans, the Niners defensive coordinator, Frank Reich getting hired by your Suns Panthers, and of course Sean Payton going to the Broncos. It just seems like you look at a guy like Eric Bieniemy, 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl championships as an offensive coordinator. Maybe he kind of gets the stigma of, oh, he's with Andy Reid, and Andy Reid's kind of running the show. Eric Bieniemy's kind of more of a figurehead. What's kind of your situation on why he hasn't been hired? Because he's interviewed for 5, 6 jobs, it seems like every year, or at least the last couple of years. What does this man have to do to get a job in the NFL as a head coach?
Bieniemy is a symptom of a much more serious problem in the NFL. It's not Bieniemy, right? Bieniemy he's paid his dues. Andy Reid is telling anybody that will listen, this guy's calling our plays. This guy is the one who is helping design our offense, putting it into play in the games. This is not an Eric Bieniemy thing. This is a old white man thing, right? This is, I think there is a lot of progress in this country heading in the right direction in terms of race relations and race relations in sports. I think the NBA does a much better job in terms of this sort of thing, but it's not, I don't think it's a coaching thing. I think it's an owner thing. I think there are owners like Robert Kraft and Jerry Jones who are in their 80s. And I don't know how many conversations you have with old white dudes in their 80s, but they are not the most enlightened people in society. There are pictures of Jerry Jones when he was a teenager trying to prevent kids from going to high school and black students from going to school in high school in Little Rock. This is a symptom of a much larger problem the NFL has, and it's a lack of diversity at the ownership level. It doesn't need to be black owners. It can be black owners. I would love to see that. I'd love to see women owners. I'd love to see other minority group owners, but people that are willing to take chances on diverse hires, people that understand that in a workplace, diversity is a strength. Right? That whether it is young, whether it is old, whether it is male, whether it is female, whether it is socioeconomic differences, that those sort of things create a tension and a creativity that leads to success. It's just not happening. And that's frustrating. You hate to see it. And it's indicative of a much greater problem in our society. It's not just the NFL, right? You would imagine it's just about any other company in the Fortune 500 as well. Is seeing this exact same thing. People who are qualified being passed over for white men. It's as simple as that.
Do you think that he should take the Commanders' offense coordinator job if it's hired to him? Look, if I'm the Commanders, I would make him the head coach, in my opinion. But because to me, it's just like, why does he have to go somewhere else to prove he's a great play caller? do you think he should take the Commanders' OC job, and B, do you think he ultimately gets the head coaching job? Because I think he will ultimately, but it just frustrates.
Oh yeah, he will. He will. The thing that frustrates me is lateral moves are for suckers, and he's not gonna. I don't think you go do the rebuild somewhere else. You're there with Patrick Mahomes. You say, "This is you give me talent, you give me skill. This is what I can do." I think the frustrating thing is that oftentimes the black coaches in the NFL, whether it be Mills, who just left who the Panthers just let go, whether it be DeMeco Ryans, is they don't get the cream of the crop jobs. They don't get the jobs like with Trevor Lawrence as your quarterback, right? They're the ones that get passed over for those jobs, and they say, you're going to get the big rebuild. Right, you're going to go down to Houston and you're going to rebuild the Texans, and The Texans don't have a they've hired 3 black coaches and they've given them a season and fired them. And they say, oh, we're gonna give them a shot. Well, we gave them a shot. They weren't successful after a year, and they're going to go hire some retread white coach, right? Cliff Kingsbury is going to be another head coach again. Josh McDaniels a head coach again. I would love to say the NFL is a place where talent and skill rises to the top. It's not. It's not. Guys fall backwards into their jobs. Lane Kiffin, daddy's boy. It's not a whole lot different than the rest of our society.
We're an hour into this podcast and we're finally getting to Tom Brady retiring for the second time. I think it's likely for good. You filed this paperwork with the NFLPA. What were your thoughts on him retiring? Obviously, in my opinion, I think you agree too. He didn't have a Tom Brady type year, but in my opinion, I think he was still a top 15 quarterback in the game.
Oh yeah,
I thought he might have had another year, maybe go to a team like the Raiders or the Niners, but it seemed like he sacrificed a lot personally for this year. I mean, obviously, divorced with his wife Giselle. So, what were your thoughts on him retiring? And I guess part 2 to that question: where does he rank in terms of greatest athletes ever? Now, again, I want to clarify: I'm not talking about athletic ability. I'm talking about career.
Yeah.
So, I guess what's kind of your take on that question?
Carl Lewis, he is not. I think he had another year in him. I was surprised when he retired, and he has achieved a rare status in my sort of sporting watching. He achieved something that guys like Derek Jeter achieved, where I actively rooted against them for 15 plus years and I don't like them, but man, do you respect what they're able to do, how they're able to perform. And I don't think there is much of a discussion in terms of Tom Brady as the GOAT in football, right? Growing up, it was Jerry Rice for me. I thought he was the sort of guy that, regular season, postseason success, his statistics still are well beyond anything that any other wide receiver, even in a day and age where wide receivers are given way more leniency than Rice was. He was always the guy for me that was the standard in terms of playoff regular season success. He was the best, and he's second to me now. It's Tom, and it's Tom by a fair amount. And you discuss him, he's not, you sort of have to leave the realm of football and you got to look at American sports, right? He's there with, and you can talk to me tell me why I'm wrong here, but I think Babe Ruth is the guy in baseball. I understand who he was playing against, who he wasn't playing against, but for a guy to be the greatest home run hitter for 60 years and to be a Hall of Fame caliber pitcher, it's pretty hard to argue with him as the top baseball player. Wayne Gretzky is if we're looking at the Mount Rushmore, it's Babe Ruth, Wayne Gretzky. I got Michael Jordan, but boy, Bill Russell. If we're going to talk about success and accomplishments, it's tough to put him there. But I got Michael just a little above Bill Russell, and then it's Tom Brady. Those are the 4 best athletes that American sports leagues have ever produced.
I agree with you there. Not much to disagree with. Like I said, I mean, I'm surprised that the Niners didn't try to sign him for a year. I mean, he's from the Bay Area.
Shocked.
He grew up a Niners fan. I thought you put him there. I mean, who's not? I think they've got a good chance to win the Super Bowl, even at 47 years old. But what do you think? I mean, obviously they don't sign him. So what's kind of their long-term solution at quarterback? I mean, do you roll with Trey Lance? Do you roll with Brock Purdy? I know you hate the Niners, but what do you think the Niners should do?
The notes I wrote here are who cares about the Niners, but I like I said earlier, I think having 2 QBs is a good thing to do. I think had the Rams been a little bit healthier and had it only been Matt Stafford that went down and they had somebody like Baker Mayfield they could turn to, right? If Baker was still throwing to Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp and had a healthy line in front of him, that's the sort of thing that saves a season. I don't think Kyle Shanahan needs to make a choice right now. Brock Purdy's got a UCL surgery. He's got 6 months worth of recovery. Trey Lance is still recovering from a leg injury. You got the offseason, and as much as I hate to admit it, I think he's a smug little prick like Aaron Rodgers. Kyle Shanahan turns chicken shit into chicken salad. He gets the best out of mediocre quarterbacks that I've ever seen. It's enormously frustrating rooting against that team because he gets the job done. I don't think there's a big rush. I think you say, bye, Jimmy. Thanks for everything. We got our two guys here, and go compete for it. I read a statistic that between high school, college, and his professional career, Trey Lance has less attempts as a quarterback than Tom Brady had this year. 799 to 798. And so maybe Trey Lance is the guy. He flashes, he shows. But if he's not, Brock Purdy looked pretty damn good for 5-6 games this year.
And my final question for you here before we transition to the end of the podcast and the express round is who's under the most pressure as a player to win next year? If you had to pick one guy, I mean, two guys that stand out, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, you kind of feel like, Josh Allen is, for all the hype the Bills have gotten, he felt like they lost this year, kind of some steam, he took a backseat to Joe Burrow. Obviously, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers stand out. Do you agree with one of those guys or someone else out there?
I had Josh Allen written down. I think somebody in for all the things you said, he gets a lot of hype, deservedly so. I think that coaching staff needs to maybe acknowledge that throwing the ball all the time isn't the best way to win football games. That there has to be a balance. It doesn't have to be 50-50, but 65-35 with guys who can pick up yardage that aren't Josh Allen. I think it's Josh Allen. I think in the NFC it's Dak. I think Dak Prescott's got I've never seen somebody who, he's right up there with Baker Mayfield in terms of guy doing more commercials that hasn't won anything meaningful that I've ever seen, right? Hey, Matt Stafford did all sorts. Aaron Donald, the boys had all sorts of Little Caesars ads, stuff like that, but they won. If I'm not going to go eat Dan and Oikos because Dak told me to, I want to go out and win something.
And my question too is, and I don't know if he's under pressure because, he's made a Super Bowl and an AFC Championship game in his 2 years as a healthy starter. But do you think maybe Joe Burrow is starting to maybe feel a little bit of that? Because, again, I kind of felt like the week leading up to the Chiefs-Bengals game, he was being overhyped a little bit. People like, oh, he's Tom Brady, Burrowhead. Cincinnati Mayor was like, can Burrow do a paternity test to see if he's Mahomes' father? I mean, do you think, going into next season, it's kind of like, okay, Joe, you got to kind of take the next step here, lead the Bengals to the Super Bowl?
I think there is a shelf life for players in sports, right? You see it. I think the NBA is the most clear-cut example of this, right? There's a lot of hype, and then there's this fatigue of the hype. Giannis wins 2 MVPs and doesn't take care of business in the playoffs during those years, and everybody says, what's wrong with him, right? They were saying the same thing about Michael Jordan back in the 80s, right? Oh, he's got all these scoring titles, but he doesn't win. I think it's coming for Luka. You know what I mean? I think Luka is a guy that is another playoff flameout away from saying you're James Harden 2.0. And I think that's coming for Joe. I think Joe Burrow has it's a lot about the outfits that he's wearing to the game. It's about the spin pass while the snow's falling. And that's cute when you're winning. That's the sort of thing that people love when you're winning. But that's the sort of thing that makes you a target, right? The Bengals, nobody cares about the Bengals. This isn't the Cowboys, right? This isn't the Giants. This isn't an institution where people are born to dislike you just because you're on that team. If he keeps behaving and not behaving, right? If he keeps getting hyped up this way and not performing, again, it's tough to say that a guy that was in the Super Bowl and the conference championship game isn't performing, but at the end of the day, this is about winning Super Bowls, and he hasn't done it yet.
Coach, this has been a great discussion on the NFL. So many exciting things to talk about as we obviously preview the offseason and see what happens going into next season. A great discussion there. Hour and 10 minutes in the podcast. So I'm excited to transition now to my favorite part of the podcast with you and just get to ask you a couple questions away from the NFL and kind of some things that you're doing, obviously, personally and beyond. My first question, though, is LeBron James. I mean, he became the all-time leading scorer, a week ago against the Thunder, past Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, broke a record that stood for 40 years. I guess, where does he rank all time? I mean, you see what he's doing now at age 38, just incredible the way he's been able to perform. Where does he stand in the greatest basketball players of all time?
I remember watching him when I was a junior in college. I was a junior. I was 20. That was a long time ago. When I remember watching him play against Sacramento. He is something else. And it's different than MJ, right? It's different than a lot of these other guys. I think the most direct comparison to him is a guy like Kareem. Right. Kareem was somebody that people knew when he was coming out of Power High School in New York City. They knew him when he was the best, when, he couldn't play his freshman year, right? He was on the freshman team at UCLA. And they said the varsity team that won the national championship that year was the second best team on campus, right? This is a guy who has dealt with hype from the time he was in high school, and to be able to consistently perform, consistently carry teams of varying talent level, whether it was some of those early teams was Zydrunas Ilgauskas as his best teammate, versus some of those Heatles teams, right, with him and Bosch and Wade. He is somebody that reminds me an awful lot of Kareem, that wore the weight of the league for decades and did it with grace. And do I agree with every decision he makes? No. Did I wish, from what I've heard, do a lot of people wish Kareem was a little bit warmer, a little nicer? Sure. Do I think LeBron's antics on social media are a little tired sometimes? Sure. But it's hard to second guess a guy who has made almost all of the right decisions from the time he was a teenager to a time when he just became the league's leading the scoring leader. And I think the thing that I am, as a former hoops player, blown away with is you don't think of him as a scorer. You don't look at LeBron James and say, this guy is a scorer. This guy is a ball player, right? When he was at his best, he was first team all defense, grab rebounds, but he could cut, he could, and the passing is up there with Magic and Jokic and Walton. These are the guys that aren't seeing the pass. They're seeing the pass that leads to the pass that leads to the pass, right? These are guys that are orchestrating the game. And for him to not just be that, but, he's John Stockton, he's Gary Payton, he's Michael, all rolled into one. And so he is somebody that, gets my utmost respect. He's top three guy in my book. That's for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of Kareem, I would actually argue, if numbers don't lie, I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had the best career of anybody. 6 NBA championships,
Yep.
6 MVPs, the most of all time. In my opinion, his scoring more impressive because he didn't shoot 3-pointers. I mean, I know Kareem kind of gets lost sometimes, but in my opinion, I mean, I think he has an argument. He had the best career out of any player in the NBA.
4 years in college, right?
Yeah.
What's his scoring total look like if he comes out when he's 18? And it's a little bit more sizzle than it is steak, but the fact that this guy made a shot, created a shot that was his own. Nobody's done it since. Nobody's come close. And go back and watch YouTube clips of this guy's skyhook, and people know it's coming. They're there. These are Mark Eatons. These are Wilt Chamberlains. These are 7'2" guys with wingspans that are 7'9", know it's coming. Arms are straight up, and that skyhook from 10 feet and in was lethal. He was killing guys. You want to tell me you think he's first overall all time? You're not going to get much of an argument from me from college through pros through his, with the Bucks, with the Lakers. That guy was, he's an all-timer.
Really quick NBA championship prediction. I mean, a lot of trades were made at the deadline.
Yep.
You going with the Suns or someone else?
I'm going with the Bucks. I love Giannis. I think today we have an attendance question in class, and my question was, who is your favorite famous person? right? It can be a politician, it can be a musician. Some folks chose Drake. My answer was Giannis. I love that guy. I think he is just everything you want from a professional athlete. Somebody who has found a way to rise above his circumstances, from coming from Greece and by all accounts pretty severe poverty, to come into a league in a different country and not some metropolitan city, right? He's moving into Milwaukee in the winter, and to find a way to grow and develop and push. And then, the way he plays out on the court, where they got to sub him out after 8 minutes because he's pushing himself. So I just don't remember many athletes that have his motor and his size and his desire. I got the Bucks, and give me Giannis every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
I actually agree with you. I mean, Giannis is probably my favorite player in the NBA. I think I remember saying after he won the championship, nice to see good guys finish first, and so he's
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, for
Couldn't
sure.
agree more.
And I think the addition of Jay Crowder is going to be a big defensively to stop some of those guys like Tatum and Brown in the
you got to have guys that have been there, that aren't going to be awed by the moment. And, when it's their turn to knock down 2 shots in the third quarter, they're ready to knock down 2 shots in the third quarter. Like, Middleton's a ball player. Love Drew. He the defense that he plays, the guys that can get into Kyrie Irving's chest, guys that can then go and get in Jason Tatum's chest and make him work for buckets. Holiday he's the sort of guy you want on your team, and to put him with Giannis, to put him with Middleton, that's a fun team to watch.
I have to ask you, and I was really looking forward to asking this question, is do you think it's time for your guy Jim Boeheim to retire? I mean, you look at Syracuse, look, actually record-wise, not bad. I think 16-10, 9-6.
Yeah, doing okay this year.
But it seems like you look at Boeheim. First of all, he's older than Coach K and Roy Williams, both guys who retired in the last couple of years. It kind of seems like in some of these games. I mean, I was at the Tech Syracuse game that kind of the 2-3 zone got exposed a little bit. It seemed like he kind of really started that zone in an era where power forwards and centers didn't shoot threes. Now all the guys on the floor shoot threes. Do you think it's time for Jim to retire?
So, yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer, this is my favorite Cuse team in the last 5 years. This has been great to watch. Love them. Love Judah Mintz. Jesse Edwards is a guy that has sort of grown through the program over 5 years. Really enjoy a lot of the players on the team. And that's a testament to Coach. If I'm going to sit there and say, what the hell are you playing your 2 kids for? The team stinks. When the team's better and the team's fun to watch, I'm going to tip my cap to him. I think he's done a nice job with the 2-3 of, watch a couple of these games, and more often than not, it's a 3-2, right? The wings are sort of pinching out, and it's not that traditional 2-3. And so I think he makes some good adjustments. If this is the same thing that used to happen when we were in the Big East, right? You play against UConn twice a year. UConn's going to figure out how to make some shots against the zone. Tech's going to figure out, Duke's going to figure out, because they see it every year. When we get to if we get to the NCAA tournament, let's give me a Oklahoma, give me a Arizona State that doesn't play against it, and we'll see how you do. I mean, the playoff success is something, but it's tough. It's tough. He's the only head coach of my favorite basketball program that I've ever known. I can't, I'm turning 40 in May. I'm turning 40 years old, and he's the only coach of that program. So to sit here and say he's got to retire, I can't say that he's got to retire, because the reason Syracuse basketball is because of Jim Boeheim. But he's old. He's old, and I think some of his recent hires, some former players, and Red Autry and Jerry McNamara, I don't know that they're the recruiters that the old guys were. We used to have guys like the GM of the Pistons now was a former recruiter. He's the guy that brought in Mello. Rob Murphy was one of his assistants. He was an Eastern Michigan head coach. he's had some issues, character issues with his time at the Pistons, but we had guys that could go out and recruit, and it's felt like in the last 15 years that he's hiring more out of comfort than out of necessity. And there's been some sanctions, NCAA sanctions, because that organization is run flawlessly, that have hurt the program. And so I think it's probably time for him to go. I also know that he has earned the right to decide when it's time to go. But boy, if he could just be a bit less of an ass about it when people ask him, that would go a long way. I think when we're on SportsCenter, the only time we're on SportsCenter is when Scott Van Pelt's saying, "Look at the way this guy's handling it." That's not a good look. That doesn't help players want to come to your program.
Coach, this was the number one question, believe it or not, I wanted to ask you coming into this podcast. And what was your thoughts on the HBO Max show Winning Time? I mean, we texted about this a couple times during when it was running. I just totally enjoyed the show. I mean, all the different characters they talk about, the Showtime Lakers and the 1980 team, all the, Jerry Buss played by John C. Reilly, the guy who played Magic Johnson. I mean, the casting was great. The storyline was great. Obviously, and as we saw from guys like Jerry West, maybe not the most accurate of what happened, but man, just in terms of, a historical fiction based on true events, I thought it was a spectacular piece. Can't wait for season 2. What were your thoughts on the show?
As a consumer of content, whether it's books, whether it's TV, historical fiction is my absolute favorite genre. I love, there are books of, The Killer Angels is a book about the Civil War that it talks about Gettysburg, and it is accurate in terms of its portrayal of the Battle of Gettysburg, but it fictionalizes conversations of generals from the North and the South, all leading up to these battles. And it's just, I love putting myself in those shoes. And that show was just it was true to the 80s. It was true to LA as far as I can tell, right? Would I be pissed if I were Jerry West? Absolutely. That's a tough depiction. That's a tough depiction for the logo, right? But I enjoyed it an awful lot, and I'll be sitting down for season 2, that's for sure. And a team that has been mythologized. I missed it. I missed the Lakers. I missed the Celtics of that era, and to be able to go back and to experience some of those stories. It's similar to, I watched The Crown, right, on Netflix, and these are historical characters that I know an awful lot about, but I didn't know the minutia of the day to day. And so to go back and see, I didn't know that they tried to hire Jerry Tarkanian, right? I didn't know about Paul Westphal biking. Oh no, not Westphal, the other head coach, biking and hurting his head, and Westphal taking over afterwards. It was a
Jack McKinney.
Yeah, it was a story that was worthy of telling. And again, historical fiction is tough because it can leave people feeling like they're being misrepresented, and I understand that. And I really enjoyed it.
2 final questions for you, Coach. Couldn't agree with you more on Winning Time. You've been so gracious with your time. I was thinking about this question recently. What's your favorite DC memorial to visit? Do you have one?
That's the easy. Love them all. One of my favorite things to do, Mrs. Curtin and I'll do occasionally. We'll get the rental bikes because that's a lot of walking, right? To get from the Capitol to the World War II to the Washington to the Lincoln. And we'll do that. We'll bike it. And that's, that turns 5 hours of walking into hour and a half, 2 hours. But the easy Lincoln, it's where I proposed to Mrs. Curtin. It's where my wife said yes to marrying me. That you couldn't ask me an easier question.
For me, I'm gonna go MLK. I just think obviously what he stood for, and we see obviously now how much the themes he talked about are still impacting our society. I just love, obviously the white bust out of a mountain of despair came a stone of hope. You got all the surrounding memorial with his quotes. And then, it's so strategically located. It's right near the FDR Memorial. It's right near Jefferson.
Yeah.
To me, that's my favorite one. And then also another one, I don't know if you've actually visited yet. I think we talked about this off air last time, is LBJ Memorial Grove. It's right near the Pentagon. And, it's not as touristy of an attraction. So there's not as much tourists there, but you've got a great view of the monument and the Potomac River. And the bust of LBJ, who I recently have kind of been really fascinated to learn more about, with obviously his great domestic successes contrasted with the Vietnam War. But I would say those two for me stand out, MLK and LBJ.
By all accounts, the Vietnam Memorial was not wildly loved when it came out. And I don't remember there being a ton of criticism about the World War II one when it came out, but I don't remember there being a ton of like, wow, this is perfect. You walk by that MLK one, and that is just, it's spot on. They couldn't have, that is just executed in a way that is true to the man, true to the message. And to put him there across the tidal basin from a man as important to our history and as entangled in the problematic parts of our history as Thomas Jefferson, I think is intentional and thoughtful, and it speaks to, on a much smaller level, that discussion we were having about what it means to be a minority in this country, and it's beautifully done.
Final question for you, Coach. Like I talked about, it's been a blast. Is on this podcast is, I'm curious, what made you want to be a teacher, and if you were giving advice to someone who, let's just say, similar to you, wants to get into high school. So, obviously, even high school teachers, specific kind of age group you're teaching to, different than elementary school, middle school, and college.
Yep.
What's kind of your advice to that person? So, again, I guess what made you want to be a teacher, and what's your advice to someone who wants to get into high school teaching?
I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. Not everybody, but lots of people go off to college and say, I don't know what I want to do. Right. And I knew I liked history. That was it. That was the only class I wanted to study. I wanted to go off to college. There were times where I thought I'd be a politician, and there are way too many skeletons in my closet for me to be a politician. But I remember it was in college where I started, here and there making an extra buck coaching lacrosse, coaching hoops. And I loved interacting with kids. And some of my best friends in college, some of my best friends still today, they were going to go into teaching. And I thought, I love history. I love being around young people. I love helping them grow and develop. And I'd spent a lot of time. I want to give my parents a lot of credit. They started me young. I was, at 10, I had a paper route. And at 14, I had, by the time I was 18, between 14 and 18, I had 6 or 7 jobs. When I was in college, every summer I had a job. It was not easy sailing, but what you learn through those jobs, just as much as what you love, is what you don't love. And, you sit behind a desk, or you work in customer service, and you realize this isn't for me. Right. Give yourself a chance to go out and try something and learn from what you do love and what you don't love. And if you figure out that you want to be around kids, if you figure out you want to be somebody that helps individuals grow, teaching is enormously rewarding. It's challenging, and it's draining, and it doesn't compensate you exceptionally well. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm broke, but do I have friends that make more money than I do? Sure. But at the end of the day, I get to come home and share my home with my wife, who is another teacher, an educator that I respect and admire an enormous amount. We get to sit here and talk about the lives that we're helping to develop. We get to sit here and talk about our colleagues who we admire and respect. And it is a profession that, my brother makes an awful lot more money than I do. And we often joke that his spreadsheets never go on to be lawyers and doctors. And so, he has his priorities and I have my priorities. And, when you look at any number of my students, classmates of yours, Brianna Elder's going off and is studying global policy in Europe. Amber Heard is working with Amber Grieve, is working with special needs students. You're chasing your passions. What else could I want from a profession like this, where you get to work with young people and help them focus on something that they want to be passionate about. You could have attended this school. Don't forget that. Okay, you could have been orange and blue, not orange and maroon. I remember that.
Yeah. And I guess to wrap up here, I remember actually a colleague of yours, Mr. Bello, who's he's pretty active on Facebook. So
Oh yeah.
I get a lot of what's going on at Marshall from him. But he said something that I thought, I was curious if you kind of agree with this too. He said, "I love summer and all, but the day that I'm not interested to go back and teach is the day that I'm retiring." Is that kind of your mentality as well?
I love my summer. I love spending time with my kids. Mrs. Curtin and I both teach online during the summer, so that allows us to stay home, but it allows our kids to be home with us. And I stepped away from coaching at the high school level when my daughter was born, when we had two kids, and I don't regret that even one iota. The thought of being a mediocre coach and a mediocre father was easy. I'm going to do my best to be a great father instead of mediocre at both. I love my summers. I love spending time with my family, but there's a day at about August 5th where I'm thinking to myself, I got to get back. I want to be around my friends. I want to be around my colleagues. I want to meet this new class of kids and see what challenges they present me and what they're going to accomplish. And so, yeah, I agree with Mr. Bello 100%. This idea that I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I don't see it happening where I'm not thinking to myself, I'm ready to start talking to these kids about the Ottoman Empire. I'm ready to start talking to these kids about the Great Depression in Brazil. Let's do this.
Coach, this has been such a pleasure as always getting to catch up with you. Every time it gets a little bit longer, but that's because, always enjoy the conversations
I
where
talk
they
too
go.
much.
No, but it's always great to get to pick your brain on not just sports, but kind of life and how you approach it. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, it's such a blast.
Billy, your passion, your willingness to chase your dreams is something that that's all you want from your students, right? You don't if you want to go out and do what you want to do, and it's about making a buck and it's about being a lobbyist in DC, go do that. But when you see a kid that was a ninth grader who was talking to me about Bob Costas, and I remember watching you at those home basketball games, it's pretty damn special. You are somebody that I'm proud to be associated with. Keep up all your work, and I know we'll talk soon.
For sure. Well, thank you so much to my freshman high school history teacher, Coach Kevin Curtin, for joining me to talk all kinds of topics, NFL, life, teaching, and DC memorials. I mean, so many different topics we talked about. Thanks so much to all of you for joining me on the latest edition of the Pulse with BP. Again, thank you to Coach Curtin. We'll see you next time. Have a great evening.